God stood beside me. I swore an oath to my countrymen and kin. Side by side we sang our anthem oh so proudly. And this is where a soldier's tale begins. We left for foreign shores in the name of freedom, comrades in arms for the liberty of man. Shoulder to shoulder, but still could not redeem them in God's name, but no one could understand.
Hello and welcome to the Late Night Veteran Show. We're on episode 89 with David Miles. Just before we bring him on, I'm going to go through a couple of updates. So Reginald Argue, the CEO of Canada, is now every show we will be playing a poem at the end of every show. He's doing a fantastic job, and our CEO in America, he's doing a fantastic job getting a team together. Now, David Miles is part of the mental health team, but he's independent. So I'm going to introduce you to David, put him on the big screen. And this is his third episode, guys. Take it away, David.
It is. Cool. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. As kind of Darren alluded to, this is the third time that I've appeared on the show. And although I've not served, I'm a big advocate of the armed services. I wanted to do something to help. And also 20 years ago, I suffered from PTSD and anxiety and depression. So I've seen things from both sides of the track. And the last 20 years, excuse me, I retrained in the kind of mental health arena. And actually, I totaled it out the other day. I'm up to 483 clients that I've managed to help with things like PTSD, anxiety and depression and other mental health issues. And really using this forum to hopefully, if you or anyone you know is struggling, any vets, just to have a kind of resource for them to watch something which may give you a bit of advice. So wherever you're watching this from tonight, whether you're sitting at home, watching on your phone, sitting in the car, or just lying awake because your mind won't switch off, thank you for being here. One of the things I would suggest maybe is just go, if you haven't got one now, go and grab a pen and paper. There may be some things that you want to write down as we go along. I won't prompt you, but I think there's some stuff that might help you in the future. So I think, as well as thanking you for giving me your time and attention, and probably more importantly, just kind of taking a moment for yourself, really. I was here in episode 74 and 77, and tonight we continue that kind of journey. And again, like I said, the focus is going to be on understanding PTSD, anxiety, panic, and depression. And if you want to understand the whole picture of where we are, I would encourage you to watch those episodes back. That's episode 74 and 77, because each one kind of builds on the last. And the one thing that I kind of, that will help you understand this episode, if you're watching it as a standalone piece, that we covered in episode 74, is tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the unconscious, about how it drives, or the unconscious part of the brain that drives your behaviors. And in episode 74, there were lots of things we covered. Two things just to repeat is that your unconscious stores all of your memories. So consciously, we can hold about 7 million bits of information. Your unconscious remembers everything about you from the moment you were born to the moment you're living today. So all those memories are stored. It's just your conscious brain or conscious memory can't store all of that. So your brain between the two, it says, okay, I think this is important, will allow you to remember this stuff. It's still going to be there, but if you need it, then we'll pull it through for you. But actually, we'll just kind of compartmentalize that and just put it to one side. That's important for some of the things that we're going to go through tonight. The other thing is that your unconscious part of the brain controls about 90% of all the decisions and all the actions that you make. So if any of you have struggled or are struggling, or you know people that are struggling, quite often they'll say to you, I don't know why I acted like that or I reacted like that. It just came out of nowhere. Well, actually, it didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of your unconscious mind, because your unconscious is controlling how you feel right now. And however you feel, as much as people can tell you to feel differently in a conscious way and go, you could cheer up, or you'll get through this. That just doesn't help, because unconsciously you have an emotion that is being given to you based on your experiences. So those two bits of information are important, really, when we go through what we're going to go through for the rest of the night. Each conversation that we have hopefully gives you another piece of the puzzle. In episode 77, we did an anxiety reduction exercise together. And if you haven't seen it, you can watch that back. And actually, for many people, I got quite a few messages after that. It was the first time they experienced how quickly the mind and body can begin to change when we understand how they work together. And a couple of messages that I kind of scribbled down, people said things like, I didn't realize something so simple could make such a difference. And actually, that is really the point of what we're going to be doing this evening and what I'm talking about. Because when you understand how, or the way that your mind works, simple things can be incredibly powerful. And in the last episode, we introduced the 3 R's. That's the 3 R's, as in the letter R. And they stood for repetition, reinforcement, and reactivation. Now, actually, I'm not a psychologist that has a God complex and likes to use loads of long words and stuff, but hopefully you'll get a sense. If you haven't heard those in the last episode, you'll get a sense of what they mean. As I'll briefly go through them again. And the response to those 3 was good enough that actually tonight we're going to go a little bit deeper, and also give you a couple of ways to start utilizing some of this stuff. And actually, we're going to do 2 exercises at the end that you could all participate in if you choose to, that I hope and anticipate will make a difference to you very quickly. And also, I'll share my email address and my Facebook account details after or during this. And I'd love to hear from you and let me know how you got on with the exercises and how they helped. So we're going to look at how patterns are created. We're going to look around this whole kind of repetition, reinforcement, and reactivation, those 3 R's. And we're going to look at why the brain and the unconscious parts of the brain holds on to certain experiences and why it seems like some memories just seem to follow us around. And most importantly, we're going to talk about, and you can have a go at, beginning to change the relationship with those memories. Because here's the important thing. Your mind is not the enemy. Your brain is not trying to sabotage you, even when it feels like it is. And it really can feel like it is when you're struggling with PTSD or anxiety or panic. And your brain and the unconscious part of the brain, its primary function is to protect you and look after you. Sometimes it just goes wrong, and sometimes it needs an update. And also tonight, because we kind of move this on every time I appear, I'm going to introduce a 4th R. And the 4th R is the one that brings everything together. I think it's the most important of them all. It's the one that brings everything we talk about together. It's the one that helps us move from simply managing our past to actually creating a different future. Because when I work with clients, the ambition isn't to give you techniques to manage how you feel. It's actually to remove the negative feelings you have in their entirety so you have nothing left to manage. Tonight's exercises are just a little taster of that will help you in the short term. And it's the one that helps us, as like I say, create this kind of different future. So the 4th R that I'm going to introduce tonight is re-identification. It's about knowing the new you when you're not carrying the baggage of old memories and old experiences and old negative emotions. So that hopefully gives you a sense about what we're going to be kind of covering through this evening. So settle in, kind of take a moment, and we'll get on with it. So I said I'll give you a brief recap. So the first R, this is this repetition. And I want you to imagine that your mind is like a cinema. I'd like you to do this now. So just imagine your mind is like a cinema. And inside that cinema, you've got a projector. And that projector is playing films. And those films are your memories. And some of them are wonderful. Some of them are ordinary. And some are memories that you would rather never, ever watch again. But sometimes the projector just starts playing a film automatically. And suddenly you're watching a film of a memory with the same images, the same sounds, the same feelings, and the same physical sensations, almost as if you were back there again. And that can be a feeling that many people experience with PTSD and anxiety. I certainly did back 20 years ago. So Darren, can I just ask you to bring up that first image just so you can get a sense of, everyone can get a sense of what I'm talking about. So this is what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to imagine you're walking into that cinema and there's only one film showing. And the credits roll at the end of the film, and then the film starts again and again and again. And you're sitting there watching something or a film of a memory that you never wanted to see again. And that's what repetition is. This is what repetition can feel like. And especially after a difficult or overwhelming experience. So here is something important. Your brain is not replaying that memory because it wants to hurt you. It's not replaying that memory because you're weak. Your brain has a really important job, and the unconscious part of the brain has an important job. It's constantly trying to predict what might happen and what might happen next and preparing you to respond. Think about it. If you touched a hot surface when you were a child, your brain learned really, really quickly, that's dangerous, remember that. If you've nearly fell from a height, your unconscious brain learned really quickly, be careful around edges. The brain prioritizes information that it feels is important. And when something is highly emotional, frightening, shocking, or overwhelming, the unconscious brain can tag that experience as something that needs attention. And the message is never, and the message is not about, let's make this person suffer. The message will always be, just let's make sure we remember this because it just might matter. Now, the difficulty comes when the brain doesn't update that file because the event is now finished, but the unconscious brain continues responding as if it's still relevant now. It's like receiving an old message on your phone that just keeps appearing years after the danger's passed. And that's why some people experience unwanted memories, panic responses, anxiety, anger, or emotional reactions long after the original event's passed. Your brain, the unconscious part of the brain, is trying to protect you. It just hasn't realized yet that the threat has changed. And I'll just pause for a moment just to let you take that in. Your unconscious brain is trying to protect you. It just hasn't realized that the threat has changed, or in fact that the threat has gone. Thanks, Darren. You can take down that image again for now, mate. So that was kind of repetition. The second R was reinforcement. Now, reinforcement is important because repetition on its own is not the whole story, because our brains learn through patterns. We create patterns. All our lives, we are creating patterns of unconscious thoughts and emotions and feelings. And the brain learns through those. And here's a kind of another analogy that I'd like to kind of show you that will give you a sense of that. If you can bring up the second image, please, mate. If you imagine that you're walking through grass, you can see in the image there, you imagine just walking through that field. The first time you walked through that field, there was no path. You had to push all the grass aside, or you had to tread it all down. And if you continued to walk that route, the second time you did it, the route would become easier because you've already flattened the grass. The third time, it'll become easier again. The fourth time, easier again. Eventually, a clear path would just appear. And our brains work in a very, very similar way. every time a particular thought or emotion or response is activated, the pathway becomes more and more familiar. And therefore, the pathway becomes easier and easier for our brain and our unconscious brain to walk through and to get through. It's like carving a groove in a piece of wood. You know, if you imagine carving a groove in a piece of wood, the first mark would be quite small, the next mark's deeper, the next one deeper still. Eventually, the blade naturally follows that groove. And that's how automatic patterns develop. That can come down now, matey. And that's why people often say, and probably a majority of the clients that I meet often say, I just don't know why I reacted like that. It just happened. I thought I was over this. And they're not failing. They're not going backwards. It's just our unconscious brains have simply become really efficient at following a familiar pathway. I use this analogy with every client I ever meet. Imagine learning to drive. When you learn to drive, if you drive, at first you have to consciously think about everything. Mirrors, indicators, gear stick if you've got a gear shift car, the speed you're going at. Everything requires attention. But after enough practice, or after you've been driving for a while, you can drive while having a conversation. You can drive while listening to music. You can drive, God forbid, if you're eating a sandwich, whatever it might be. Because the brain has created an automatic pattern and it doesn't have to consciously think about it anymore. And the same learning ability that helps us develop those kind of useful skills can also maintain unwanted emotional patterns. And the brain doesn't ask, is this a helpful pattern or an unhelpful pattern? It just asks, is it a pattern that I use regularly? So the more often that you go into panic, the more often you go into anxiety, the more often you go into whatever the symptom is of your PTSD or depression, your unconscious thinks, is this a pattern I use regularly? And because regular patterns, like walking through the field, the more you do it, the easier it gets to walk through because everything's flat. Regular patterns require less energy. And our brains, and especially our unconscious brains, are a little bit lazy. And it really likes efficiency and it takes the quickest route. So the reinforcement part of this is actually our brain saying, this pathway seems important, let's make it easier to access. So you're repeating it. There's that first R, the repetition. You're repeating that kind of memory over and over again, almost living in it again. The more you do that, you clear that pathway. And the more that you clear that pathway, the more our brains and our unconscious that stores our memories and that creates our emotions, that pathway becomes much easier to access. That's why people often that I work with and people that I chat to and people on here actually will say, actually, 3 years ago it was bad, but actually it happens more often now. It's happened more regularly now. The problem I'm having, it feels stronger because it's that kind of almost like that snowball effect where the more you do it, the better you get at doing it and the easier it is for you to do that negative feeling that you might be gaining. So that's the kind of second R. The third R is that reactivation. And we'll just have a quick look at that. This is where sometimes people I work with become quite confused, or a lot of them, by the time I've met them, have gone through a whole host of therapies, bless them, and also probably a whole host of medications. And they'll say things like, yeah, I need some help again. I was fine. For 6 months, I've been absolutely fine, not had those feelings or those negative emotions. And I'd even thought about it for months. And then they'll say, and then suddenly something happened and I was right back there again. And that's that whole kind of reactivation, that reactivating of that memory and the emotions that you attach to that memory. So as far as that kind of that's quite often what people just say, like a trigger appeared. It's a very fashionable word. It's like, oh, I've been triggered or something triggered me. But it does happen. And it could be a sound, a smell, a place, a conversation, a date on the calendar, even sometimes a facial expression from somebody else. Something that reminds the brain, and the unconscious brain that, remember, stores all of our memories, something that reminds the brain of that original experience. And suddenly, that emotional response just appears again. Not because you're choosing it, but it's, remember, it's followed that really easy path that it's trod. All the grass is laid flat and bare now. And you're not choosing it, and it's not because you're weak, but actually it's because the brain has actually connected those things together. And I've got a kind of another metaphor and a graphic. If you could bring up graphic 3, please. Thanks, Darren. Imagine that you've got a smoke alarm in your house. I'm just going to give Darren a nudge. Have you got graphic 3 there, please, mate? Cool, thank you. Imagine you've got a smoke alarm in your house, and hopefully we all have. That smoke alarm has one job, and that's to detect danger. That's its job. It's going to detect danger, and it's going to warn you about it. Now, imagine that smoke alarm becomes really sensitive. It doesn't just go off when there's a serious fire. It goes off when someone makes toast, when someone lights a candle, sometimes even bizarrely when people boil a kettle. And the alarm isn't broken. The alarm is just simply detecting something as a possible threat. And that's exactly the same as what can happen with our emotional alarm system. Because the brain can become really highly efficient at detecting anything that resembles the original experience. I mentioned before in a previous episode, it's why for those of you that have seen action when you served or as you're serving, that's why someone shutting and slamming a car door, that noise can take you straight back to an experience you had in action, and it can actually get that feeling straight back to you really, really quickly, because the brain becomes really efficient at detecting anything that resembles even slightly that original experience. So the problem isn't that alarm exists. That's not the problem, that the alarm exists. The problem is that the alarm is reacting to something that actually is no longer happening and is no longer dangerous. And that's why it was worth just going over or introducing, if it's new to you, these 3 R's, because they create a cycle. Repetition. Repetition means that memory becomes active. And that image can come down now, Darren, thank you. Repetition is that memory becomes active. The reinforcement is the pathway becomes easier and stronger, like the snowball effect. And the reactivation is that the triggers bring the response back online again. So it's a loop, and it's a pattern. And remember, your unconscious likes patterns. It's really good at running patterns. So it's about how do you disrupt that pattern? And there are loads of things you can find online about disrupting that pattern in the short term or to help you feel better. I always like to say, when I work with clients, it's about actually getting them to a point where actually you don't have to manage those patterns or those triggers, they just go. But once you understand that, it's like I said, once you understand that loop, then you can start to interrupt it. And that's where we're going to go towards next. So that's the 3 R's. The next question is, I guess, is actually, well, why does the brain do this? And why does it hold on to certain experiences? And why can something that happened years ago still feel so close to me, almost like it's happening again right now? And I think that's one of the most important conversations that anyone can have. Because when people don't understand their own reactions, they often start blaming themselves. So they say things like, why is it that I'm still affected by this? Why is it I can't move on? What is there that's wrong with me? But the truth is, nothing's wrong with you. Your brain is doing something it was designed to do. Your unconscious is doing something that it was designed to do. And that is to act as your protection system. Remember, it's constantly scanning your environment, looking for those patterns, trying to keep you safe. And if you think about our ancestors hundreds of thousands of years ago, the person who remembered where danger was actually had a better chance of surviving. If you knew where the woolly mammoths all lived when we were cavemen and women, then if you could remember where they went, if you could remember their pattern of walking and where they would go to at different times of the year, you had a better chance of surviving. So the brain has evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to pay attention to the things that mattered. And survival in any kind of human is one of our primary instincts. The problem is that brain can continue treating that old dangerous if it's a current one. And I'd like to show you another image, this image 4, please, Darren, that kind of demonstrates this of what's happening. If you just imagine that your brain is a huge library and your unconscious is a huge library. And in that graphic, you can see behind her, there are volumes and volumes and volumes of memories. Remember, your unconscious stores all of your memories from birth up until this second. And every day of your life, every day, new experiences are being stored. Conversations that you've had, people you meet, places you visit, things you learn. And most memories are filed away neatly. They have a beginning and a middle and an end. They become part of your story, part of your life story. And you can look back at them and think, yeah, that happened. But some experiences are just different. Some experiences are so intense and so emotional and so overwhelming that the unconscious brain doesn't process them in the same way. Because what it does, instead of being neatly placed on that shelf behind her, it could, or us, it can feel like that book has been left on the desk or left open on the desk. And there's her big book with some trauma sitting there on the desk in front of her. And it sits there, left open on the desk with a great big bookmark sticking out of it. And every time you walk past it, the brain says, can you just check that again? Can you just make sure we understand what happened? And make sure we're prepared if something similar happens again. So the book gets reopened, not because your brain or your unconscious wants you to suffer, because your brain is trying to make sense of something that's important. And actually, just imagine what would happen, because this is what's happened to us. It happens to all of us. Just imagine walking past that open book every day for years. You see the same page, and therefore you feel the same emotion. Your body responds, your heart rate changes, your breathing changes, your muscles tense, not because the original event is happening again, but because your unconscious and your brain is responding to the memory of it. Excuse me. And that's why difficult experiences can feel like they're happening in the present, why past difficult experiences can feel like they're happening right now. And because the body can react to a memory, or a remembered threat, easy to say, in a way that feels very real, but it's just remembered. The threat isn't there anymore, it's just remembered. And that's why anxiety almost feels like a prediction. And the prediction is, and it's driven by that great big book sitting on the desk there that you walk past every day. The prediction is, actually, do you know what? This might happen again. This could go wrong. This isn't safe. It's like somebody getting into a car, and I've actually worked with quite a few people over the last 20 years who were put off driving because they were involved in a car accident. And in their head, if you can imagine what was going on, every time they got into a car, they had a panic attack because they're going, this might happen, I could crash again. And actually, this could all go badly wrong for me. This isn't safe. And actually, there is absolutely no reason, as long as they're careful, that they're going to have a car accident again, just because they had one before. So the past isn't a prediction of the future. It can't be, because none of us can predict the future. But it feels like a prediction. Anxiety can feel like a prediction. And that's mainly, like we said, is because actually, well, and actually there's one other thing. That's why that sometimes the reaction can feel really physical. And because it's the body's actually responding to the message that it's receiving. So physically you feel those feelings. And effectively our unconscious brain just hasn't updated the file that says that happened in the past, doesn't mean it'll happen in the future. You can just put that to one side now. I don't need to go past that big red book on the desk anymore. And what it hasn't said, what you haven't said, or your unconscious hasn't said, is that was then, this is now. And actually, a little quick tip that absolutely write down, if you've written anything down, great. If you haven't, write this down, is that if you ever feel yourself getting anxious, it's really useful just to ask yourself, okay, I'm feeling like this, or this feeling is starting. Actually, is this anything to do with right now, or am I reacting to a memory? Is it anything to do with anything happening right now, or am I just reacting to a memory? And actually simply doing that can start quelling some of the anxiety, because the answer that you'll give yourself is, actually, I'm just reacting to a memory. It's not about anything in my life that's threatening me now. It's just, I'm reacting to a memory. And that will help your unconscious just to shut it off anyway. So it's a really quick thing that you can do that might just take that level of anxiety down a little. And the more that you can do that, and the more you update that file, the more that you keep asking yourself that question, guess what happens? After a certain amount of time, that old feeling, or that old fear, or that old reaction just stops coming, because your unconscious learned that actually it doesn't need to produce it anymore for you. Just remember, that kind of question is, am I reacting to something happening around me now, or is this just a memory? And if it's just a memory and there's no threat to you now, it can shut itself off. And the fourth art that we kind of mentioned about bringing this all together is this thing around re-identification. This is the part that completely changes the way, I can change the way that somebody sees themselves. This is the fourth R, this re-identification. Because changing patterns isn't just about changing thoughts. It's also about changing identity. And I'll just briefly explain that. When someone goes through difficult experiences in lives, and if you've served, then or you're serving now, then you've gone through some difficult experiences probably, especially over a long period of time. Those experiences can start to influence the way that you see yourself, or that others can see themselves. And the language changes. And I see this a lot in people. So really pay attention to the language that you use with friends or family, and importantly with yourself. And when I meet clients, I'll ask them, obviously what's been going on in their lives. And some of them will say, instead of saying things like, actually, I experience anxiety, what they'll actually say to me is, I am anxious. Well, actually, no one's born anxious. Nobody is, it's a learned feeling from somewhere. So actually, you're not actually anxious. What you are is you're experiencing anxiety. And they'll say things like, I experienced something, instead of saying something like, I experienced something traumatic, they'll start saying things like, I'm damaged. And actually, they're not damaged. They've experienced something traumatic. And instead of saying things like, I've struggled in the past, they'll start saying things like, I'm broken. And the words that you use to describe yourself to others, and the words you use with yourself, they really, really matter. That image can come down now, thanks, Dan. Because the way that we describe ourselves influences the way we experience ourselves. You imagine, I'm very lucky. I got over my crap 20 years ago, and I believe I'm a very confident person. And I tell myself that probably fairly regularly, not out loud because people would wonder why I kept shouting it out, but I believe I'm a confident person. And the more I tell myself that, it actually just reinforces it, because that way I describe myself influences the way that I experience myself and that other people experience me. So do I ever have periods of self-doubt or self-reflection? Yeah, of course I do, because everyone does, they're human. But actually, generally, I am a confident person. And the more I tell myself that, the more I believe it. And this isn't some bullshit about self-affirmations and stuff, because they can work. This is about the language that you use with yourself, the language that you use to describe whatever it is you're going through. Because you are not the kind, you are not a whole, your definition of you is not anxious. You're going through an anxious period maybe, but you are not, I am anxious. And there's a huge difference between it, the language. There's a huge difference between saying something like, I am a person who experienced fear. And who hasn't? I have, for sure. I'm a person who has experienced fear. It's very different from saying, I'm a fearful person. If you're saying I'm a fearful person, it's almost like you're giving up. It's like you're saying, that's me, that's my identity. I am a fearful person. You're not. You're a person that experienced fear at some point. And that's really important, because your unconscious really listens to what you say to it, and it hears everything. And if that's how you're describing yourself, it will want to help you. And it'll go, okay, well, if that's what you want to believe about yourself, or you believe about yourself, I'll reinforce that. And the difference is between all of those phrases that one side of it describes something that happened, like I am a person who experienced fear, and the other type of language becomes your identity, i.e., I am a fearful person. And a lot of the clients I meet, one of the most successful, all of the successful clients are the ones who actually just recognize that whatever they're feeling, it doesn't define them, it doesn't describe them, it's just at that moment in time, they are feeling something. And also that's really important, because when you recognize, or you start telling yourself that it is just at that moment in time you're feeling something, you're giving yourself permission to not feel it in the future. If you say to yourself, I've always struggled with loud noises, they make me feel anxious, and therefore I'm an anxious person. Well, congratulations, because the more that you tell yourself that, or you tell people that, actually it will happen, and it will just become part of you. So what you are is actually a person that once upon a time was fearful or was frightened by a loud noise. That very different. It's not defining your future, it's not defining your identity, it's just talking about how you are now. And I do like my picture metaphors. So if you could bring up image 5, Darren, please, thank you. Let me just kind of show like your way around that. Just imagine you're wearing a coat. Okay, the coat you got is an old coat. It's heavy coat. It's absolutely soaking wet, and it's covered in mud. And you've worn it for so long that actually you forgot now that you're wearing it. And you start believing, this is who I am. This coat is just a part of me, and that this coat is now part of my identity. But the truth is, it's a coat, and it's just something you're carrying. It's not who you are. Re-identification is the moment that someone begins to realize, I am not my anxiety, I am not my trauma, I am not my past, I am the person who experienced those things. And that distinction is incredibly powerful, because if something is part of your identity, it feels like it's permanent. But if something is a pattern, it can be changed. And now just imagine taking that coat off. Some of you may be doing that now. Just imagine taking that heavy, wet, old, covered in mud coat off. And just you can feel that weight leaving your shoulders and feel that freedom of movement. And you can feel the difference between carrying something heavy and just standing freely. And that is what identification actually represents. It's the moment someone begins to reconnect with themselves beyond what happened to them. It's rebuilding confidence, it's rebuilding purpose, it's rebuilding self-belief, it's rebuilding direction, connection. And this is not about pretending the past never happened. The past mattered, your experiences matter. The emotions mattered, but the past does not have to control the future. The person you were before that experience is still there. That's a really important bit to grasp. The person that you were before that experience is still there. Sometimes they're just a bit hidden underneath that big old coat. And I just like that to sink in for a second about how you could just take that coat off. So I guess that can come down now. Thanks, Dan. I guess now the kind of question becomes, how do we begin changing the cycle then? Because that's all well and good. You know, how do we interrupt the 3 R's? Well, actually, just thinking about it again, if we go back to that cinema, you know, you remember the projector is playing a film, the film feels real, the emotion feels real, the body responds. But here is something that's really fascinating about memories and our memory. Because every time we remember something, we actually reconstruct the memory. We bring it back to the present. And that time lag, which is minuscule, and recent studies have shown that it's about 0.6 of a second. It's about 0.6 of a second of you experiencing something and then reacting to it. It's not instant, but 0.6 of a second is an amount of time. And that gives us an opportunity. It gives us an opportunity to stop the reaction, because we can ask ourselves that question about, whoa, hold on, is this based on a memory or is this something that's happening to me now? It gives you a chance to go, well, actually, it's just based on a memory, so I can stop that 0.6, stop that 0.6 of a second in its tracks. And another thing that it can do, it gives us the opportunity that actually, if a memory has to be activated and reconstructed, we can update it. And again, this is not about removing a memory, it's about removing some of the feelings that we might associate with that memory. So it just becomes something in our past. If you think about editing a film, imagine you take an old movie and you're sitting in the editing room. It might be that old movie of something that happened to you or the cause of why you might not be feeling great. Imagine taking that old movie and sitting in the editing room and allowing yourself to look at the scene differently, allowing yourself to change the perspective, allowing yourself to change the soundtrack that goes along with the film, maybe change the lighting, maybe change the coloring. When you can change the meaning that you attach to what happened, because you can edit it, it's within your power, within your gift to edit your own movies and your own memories of what's happened in the past to you or around you. And changing the meaning that you attach to what happened is really important for releasing the impact and the strength that it has over you today and in the future. So the event itself will remain part of your history, but that's it. It's just part of your history. And the emotional responses therefore to that can also change. And effectively, it's kind of like the difference between saying something like, that happened and I'm still attached to it, and that happened and I survived it. Because whatever you've experienced, there is one really positive side to all of this. And not everyone gets there, unfortunately. The real positive side is right now, here, you're watching this. Right now, you're present and you're here. So it's very different when people say, that happened and I'm trapped in it. I can't move past it. That's very different to saying, actually, something happened, that happened, and I survived it. And especially with trauma victims, whatever kind of trauma, that's really important to understand. Because one of them, saying something like, that happened, I'm still trapped in it, that you're reliving that experience over and over again. Saying that happened and I survived it, that's very different. That's you and your unconscious learning what you needed to take from that experience to move past it. And the learning is you survived it. And in a future episode, we might do something around things like survivor's guilt and things like that. But for now, it's almost like a pat on your back. If you or somebody who you know has been struggling recently with any of these mental health issues, how often does anyone ever congratulate them for actually being present and surviving it? Most of the time, people just don't know how to react at all. But it would be a really cool thing if people got some recognition for actually struggling and surviving it and being present and being having the potential to remove those kind of negative feelings. And all of these forms a really completely different relationship with our memory. And it doesn't mean that we erase. You don't erase anything. You're not erasing memories and or experiences. We don't delete the past. We don't pretend difficult things didn't happen. What we do help is our brain and our unconscious brain recognize this was important, that happened, but it's not happening now. The book can go back on the shelf. The warning system can become calmer. The coat can come off and the projector can stop playing the same film. And when that happens, the 3 R's begin to lose their power. Repetition becomes less intense, reinforcement becomes weaker, reactivation becomes far less overwhelming. And this is where people often experience something they haven't felt for a long time. Choice. The ability to respond differently. The ability to choose how you want to respond to something happening around you. The ability to look forward instead of constantly looking back. So maybe just kind of pause and take a breath now. I've been going for 47 minutes. And I just, in the next sort of like 10, 15, 20 minutes, I just want you to kind of take some of that stuff on board that I've been through, because we're going to have a go at a couple of things. We're going to make this practical. So we're going to do 2 short exercises together. One is to help you change the emotional distance of a memory, to move it way, way further back so that it's harder for your unconscious to find it. It's almost like regrowing the long grass again. And one is to help you connect with the person that you want to become. So how to make this practical. This is important because actually understanding something intellectually is useful, massively useful, but experiencing something different is actually where kind of learning really begins. So before we begin, I want to make this really clear. This isn't therapy. With however many people are watching this, I can't go through any kind of therapeutical stuff with you because there's too many of you. But what this is really cool at is just demonstrating to you how the mind can respond when we change the way that we represent an experience. So this is the part where you can choose to take part or not. If you want to take part, that's great. You can just follow some instruction. It's really cool. It's safe. If you choose not to, just watch along. Or if you've got enough for this session already, then I guess if you're watching this on repeat or whatever, you can stop now. But I think personally it's worth having a go. So if you've chosen to take part, what I'd like you to do is pick something in your life that is uncomfortable but manageable, just as an example. So don't change the most extreme painful experience of your life. And there is a really logistical reason why that is, because I'm not there in the room with you to help you through it if it's that emotional. So just to get a learning and get your brain and your unconscious used to this kind of process, pick something that is uncomfortable but kind of manageable, not the most painful experience that you've had in your life. Choose something maybe that bothers you, something that actually does create some kind of frustration, gets you irritated, or just create some kind of emotional reaction. And it could be a conversation you remember, a situation you remember. They're all going to be memories, but something that you know affects you. And I'll just give you a second to think what that might be. For most of us, it probably isn't going to be that hard. And if, like I said, if you just want to watch, that's absolutely fine. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. Okay. So nobody's going to see you doing this, but when you're ready, I'd like you just to close your eyes and just think of that memory. And just get a picture of it in your imagination. And I want you to imagine it like a picture in front of you. So that memory now is, you've created an image. Our brains are, we work pictorially, our memories are pictorial, so you'll very quickly have an image of that. I'm sorry if this is uncomfortable to start with, but we're going to do something now to help that become, or that situation or that conversation, whatever it was that you're thinking of, become a lot calmer and a lot less reactive. Okay, so first of all, I want you to imagine the picture. This is important, that it's in front of you. So I want you to imagine the picture is in front of you, not inside you. It's not in your head. I want you to imagine the picture is in front of you. And it's almost like you're looking at a photograph. And now I just want you to begin noticing some details about that image that's been created of this thing that irritates you or makes you uncomfortable. I want you to notice how close the picture is to you. I want you to notice things like, is it right in front of your face or is it further away? Is it arm's length? Where is it? Notice the size of the picture. It's a strange question, I guess, but your unconscious will know the answer and you'll get it in your head very quickly. Is it a large picture? Is it a small picture? Is it the size of a pea, or is it the size of a house? You know, what's the size of the picture that your unconscious has created? And I want you to notice the colors in the picture. Are they bright colors? Are they faded? And notice whether it feels like a clear picture or something fuzzy and a bit more distance. Just look at it, just observe it, no judgment. And the one thing that's really important is that if you're seeing the picture through your own eyes, so if you're actually almost experiencing that, whatever it is you've come up with, if you're seeing it through your own eyes, I'd like you to step back out of it so that you can now see yourself in that picture. It's really important. So you're not looking at this image through your own eyes. I want you to step back out of it if you are, so that you can now actually see yourself in the picture. That's right. And I'd like you to just imagine gently moving that picture further away from you. So just imagine that picture moving back further and further away from you. And it's like sliding a photograph across a table. Just move it further and further away, but you can move it as far away as you like. You can put it the other side of the ring you're in, you can put it across the road, put it in a different county or state. Just kind of move it further away and just notice how that feeling that you attach to that memory, and that just slowly starts to diminish the further that you move that picture away from you. And now I'd like you to make the picture smaller. And it's getting smaller anyway as it moves off into the distance, but now just shrink the size of the picture down. Imagine the picture just shrinking. So it's a really small picture. And then turn the brightness down on it. If you imagine getting the remote control for your television, you turn the brightness down on the picture so that it's moved further away from you. It's got a lot smaller and it's a lot less bright than it was. And you're just allowing that image to become more and more distant, just more and more further away. And it just keeps moving away from you further still. And maybe it's the size now of like a postage stamp that you put on a letter. And now just notice, oh, I'm sorry, one last thing. If it was a color picture, take all the color out of it for me and just make it black and white. So this picture now that is a long way away from you is shrunk in size completely. And you're actually seeing yourself in the picture. You're not looking through your own eyes. And if it was colorful, now you've drained all the color out, so it's black and white, and you've really turned the brightness down. And just notice what's happening. And just notice if anything changes. And notice the feeling reducing. And just notice actually that when you originally created that image, you might have slightly increased your heart rate, or you might have started fidgeting a little bit. And now actually the body responds differently and can respond differently as you feel more distance from that memory. And I want to ask your unconscious just to seal that image in where it is now. So any attributes that is given to this new image now, I'm just going to ask your unconscious to seal that image in where it is. And just by clicking my fingers, so when I click my fingers, your unconscious will hear that and it will know to seal the image with those new attributes in it right now. And just notice how you're feeling. Just notice how now you can open your eyes and maybe you can, again, try and recall that same memory. And maybe you can get the memory back, you'll get the memory back, but now just notice the difference that you might be associating with that memory, how you might feel about that memory. Now that it's had all of those attributes changed and it's been moved further away from you. And feel good. I love using techniques like this with people to help people, not usually on a live broadcast, but I'd be really curious to understand if you email me, my email's on the screen now. Just email me, let me know what you experienced. And it's useful for me as well, because on future episodes, we can start building some of this stuff if you guys find it useful. And for many people, in fact, for most people, the way that, or changing the way that you can imagine something can change the intensity that you connect to it. That's why these kind of techniques can be really, really powerful. Okay, so you'll notice now with your eyes open and you're back in the room and everything's safe, it's that the memory didn't change, the event hasn't changed. What's changed is now very quickly is the relationship you have with that memory. And that's an important distinction, because we can't change what happened, but we can change how strongly it actually controls us today. Okay. The second thing is just to give you a chance to actually start reconnecting with your future self, this re-identification thing, because change isn't just about releasing the past. It's also about creating a relationship with the person that you want to become. I'll say that again. It's about creating a relationship with the person that you want to become. And I've worked with many high performers on this, whether it be athletes, performers, leaders, military. Everyone, I do it, and we all do it to some degree, but they mentally rehearse success before they physically perform. That's really important. They mentally rehearse what success looks and feels like before they actually do the task they've got to do. So in their head, all they have is a vision of success. All they have in their head is a vision of achieving something really well. And the brain responds really strongly to imagined experiences. This is really cool how we can trick the unconscious a little bit. Because the brain responds so strongly to imagined experiences, because imagination activates many of the same systems and neural pathways that are involved in a real experience. Our unconscious can't always determine what's an imagined experience and what's been a real experience. So let's just try something again. Again, it's simply an exercise. And again, take part in whichever way feels comfortable for you. And And I just want you to close your eyes again if it helps. It probably will help. So maybe close your eyes again if you want again. And I want you now to imagine a future version of yourself. Imagine maybe 2 months away, 6 months away, a year away, 5 years away, 10 years away, whatever that might be. Just imagine that future version of yourself. It's a version of you that has moved through all of the challenges that you're currently facing. So in your mind's eye, in your imagination, I want you to create that image of that future you, having moved through all the challenges that you're currently facing. And it's a version of you that feels calmer. It's a version of you that feels more confident, and a version of you that feels more in control. So maybe adjust that image you've got of yourself in the future to make yourself appear and feel calmer, to make yourself look and feel confident and look and feel like you're in control. It doesn't have to be perfect. Not someone who never has difficult moments again in their future, because we'll all have difficult moments, it's life. But someone who knows how to handle them and handles them without the old baggage, without the old problems that you might, or someone you know might have been struggling with. And I want you to be really focused on, just see how that person stands. Just notice the difference about how that person might stand to how you stand now. Listen to them speak and listen how their voice sounds different. Notice how the posture, the shoulders, the straightness of the back. Notice how they breathe differently, maybe. They might breathe slower and deeper than you do currently, this future you. And like I said, listen to how they speak and the language they use and the words they use. And notice how they move through the world. How do they respond to situations that previously overwhelmed them? How is your future self responding to situations that previously overwhelmed you? Watch yourself responding differently, confidently, calmly, without the old baggage. And then I'd like you to ask yourself now, looking at you in however length of time in the future you went, looking at yourself maybe in 5 years, wherever it was. What would they tell you? What would you tell yourself? What would your future self tell you now? Positively, all positive learnings. How would they explain to you how they got through it? How would they tell you that they became stronger and more confident? What would they want you to know now? What is your future self, this new you? What is it they want you to know? And now I'd like you to imagine you stepping into that version of yourself. Actually, just imagine just stepping into that image, that body that you created, almost like putting on that identity. I mean, to feel that confidence, feel that calm. Breathe the way they breathe, stand the way they stand, and just look at the world now through their eyes. They're your eyes, which is in the future. What you're experiencing now, that is re-identification. This is moving from, this is what happened to me, towards, this is who I'm becoming. And the goal is not to become someone completely different. The goal is to reconnect with parts of yourself that just may have been hidden. The confidence, the strength, the resilience. The person who was always there underneath the difficult experience. And I'd like your unconscious just to seal that image of a future you in, so that you now have that stored as an aspiration, and your unconscious will help you work towards whatever that was. So as long as it was that confident, calm, strong, in control person, then I'd like your unconscious just to kind of seal that future image of you in, so that it has that as an aspiration and a goal. And same as before, I click my fingers to just help you unconscious just know it's time to seal that in right now. And once it's sealed in, you can just open your eyes now and just let that settle for a second. I hope it feels different for you now. You can let me know. I just want to share 3 stories with you before I finish, really. They're all stories about veterans I work with. This is how you can change this really quickly. The first story was a guy who came to see me. He was always exhausted. He told me, and I'm going to absolutely read this out because I wrote it down a few years ago. He said to me, "I'm scared to sleep because every night the memories would return. It's the same images, the same emotions, the same physical reactions. I've been carrying this for years." His words. And like many people who experience trauma, he had tried different approaches. He tried medication, talking therapies, he tried distraction, lots of things. And he really felt stuck. And what he described is what we were talking about, is like an unconscious brain really responding to an old threat. The projector was still running, the alarm system was still highly active, and the memory had never really moved into the past. And we just did work on actually helping him change his relationship with that memory and reduce the emotional intensity of it, and just helping his unconscious brain recognize that actually this happened, but it's not happening now. And afterwards, he described it in a way that kind of stayed with me, which was, he said that it feels like the memory has finally gone where it belongs in the past. And I love that. And I quote that regularly with clients now. That is the goal, not to pretend it never happened, not to remove the importance of the experience, but just to allow yourself to live in the present again. There was another story, again, another veteran. He'd carried guilt around with himself for about 20 years. And he kept telling himself, "I don't deserve to feel better." And it didn't matter what he did. Guilt is a real thing amongst veterans, especially those with PTSD. He just believed he didn't deserve to feel any better. And it affected his relationships, his decisions, his confidence, his view of himself. And over time, the guilt had moved from something that he'd felt to something he believed he was. And it became, like I said, it had become part of his identity. And so this, when we do the work, and this was not about saying to him, "You don't need to feel guilty," or "You shouldn't feel guilty," because that doesn't really help, because emotions have a purpose. But the work was separating what happened from who he was. It's actually separating what happened from who I am. And he began to realize that guilt was something he was carrying. It wasn't a definition of who he was. I guess it's that, and that's where I got the idea of the coat metaphor from, because his coat had become so familiar, he actually thought it was his skin, and it really, really wasn't. And I remember him saying afterwards that it felt like he could start to breathe again when he got rid of it. And it not because the past disappeared, because the past no longer controlled his identity. And the final story was an ex-military lady who for years and stuff suffered panic attacks. And she lived in fear of the next one happening. And interestingly, that fear became itself part of the problem, because she used to get panic attacks worrying about having panic attacks, worrying about having panic attacks. And it was just like this vicious loop, vicious cycle. And panic creates a kind of difficult cycle, because the sensation appears, the brain interprets it as danger, the body responds, then the sensations become stronger, and the brain says, "See, something must be wrong." And that loop kind of reinforces itself. And she tried loads of different strategies, but she'd never really changed the underlying pattern. And so we just worked on quickly understanding the loop and what the brain was doing, and then changing the relationship with those sensations. And we did that really quickly, actually. We did that in a 3-hour session. And she began to feel less controlled by panic immediately. And she wrote to me about 5 weeks later and said, "Thank you, I feel like I'm in charge of myself again," which is a really nice statement. Because the goal is not a life with no challenges. The goal is a life where challenges no longer control every decision you make. So as we kind of come to the end of my bit tonight, I want you to remember something important. You are not your worst experience. You are not the difficult moment that happened to you. You are not the thought that keeps appearing, and you are not the emotion that you feel. Those 4 things are really important. You're not your worst experience. You're not the difficult moment that happened to you, and you're not the thought that keeps appearing, and you're not that emotion that you feel. And you are absolutely the person that experienced those things, and there's a very important difference, because remember, those experiences can shape us, but they do not have to define us. And tonight we talked about those repetition, reinforcement, reactivation. We've looked at how memories become patterns and how the brain learns. And we've looked at identification, about the moment where you begin to see yourself differently. Remember, this is not about you becoming someone new. This is actually becoming just a slightly better version of you, without the baggage, without the coat, without the film replaying over and over again. So if you're watching tonight and look, something we've discussed has connected with you, I want you to know this is not my version of the world. It's most people that work with mental health version of the world. Is you don't have to keep carrying something simply because you've carried it for a long time. It's not your identity. Remember, we sometimes get used to carrying that weight around with us. We forget what it feels like to be without it. We think this is just who I am now. But remember, the patterns can be changed. And if those two little exercises we did helped you, then you can rerun this video or this show and just go through it again and watch it go through again. And I guess lastly, I know I've had a few messages from people that it's not just veterans that have started watching these, it's people that have seen my posts on Facebook have come on board to watch some of these. But I guess this is specifically to veterans that are watching, and if you're serving still. I always think this sounds really patronizing, but it's really not meant like that. Just thank you for what you do. I know, unfortunately, you're not always appreciated, but you definitely are by me, so thank you. And thank you to your families as well and your friends for things that they've gone through. And if you'd like to have a conversation, you can contact me. There's no pressure. I don't put any pressure on anyone to have a chat with me. It's just a conversation about what might be possible. Darren's been brilliant. He's put my email address throughout all of this show, so you can go back and see it. Facebook, my Facebook is just David Miles NLP. There's dozens and dozens of videos I post on there. Most of them, to be fair, Darren posts on his site as well, so you can see those through that. And listen, whether you decide to ever say hello to me on email or on Facebook, I guess this is my last thing to take away from tonight. There's, understanding yourself is really powerful. Understanding you is really powerful. Understanding that your brain and your unconscious has learned patterns is really powerful. And just remember this kind of last phrase, I guess, is that your brain is absolutely capable of learning new patterns. This is not you. It's just a moment in time. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Darren. That's my bit. That's my bit.
Cheers. Thanks, David. Some great examples there, and
Thank you.
absolutely brilliant. I like the one you did on the last episode with the fingers, where you get a negative thought and you squeeze your finger and you think of something positive. That really helps me, and I do take that on board. And David, you're a great asset to the show. Guys, David emails at the bottom. It's not just for veterans. Anybody can contact David. Please get in contact with him. You've got to make the first move. He won't approach you. I've had a couple of sessions with him, and you've got to approach him. He won't be chasing you. So you've got to really want it.
Yeah.
David, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Absolutely great asset to the show. Any last words before we end the show?
Yeah, well, I guess just you remember I show pictures because our memory is really good at showing pictures. Maybe just have a look at the pictures back for those of you that are watching this on repeat, and remember, you're not the film playing on the screen. And you can you can edit your own film and edit your own story. You're the director, the producer, and the scriptwriter all in one. Go and be amazing and change it. That's it.
Okay, cheers. Thank you very much, guys.
You're welcome.
Please email him if you want to reach out if any shows relate to you. He's on Facebook, TikTok. So take a look at that. Please subscribe to him. This is the Late Night Veteran Show, episode 89 with David Miles. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
I pledged allegiance to the flag God stood beside me. I swore an oath to my countrymen and kin. Side by side we sang our anthem oh so proudly, and this is where a soldier's tale begins. We left for foreign shores in the